We all know halal as being those 15-30 seconds where the animal is slaughtered. But what happens before that? What's the process by which we rear animals? In this episode, we talk to Lufti, who's taking a brand new approach to halal farming. Check it out. So, Lutfi, you've already told us that you did not grow up in a farm. It's not something that you were used to earlier in your life. So what inspired you to move from the city to somewhere like this and start this?
It was a combination of things, partly for that very simple reason that it was a good way of life, a very halal way of life. I'd always had an interest in the environment. I'd been teaching and lecturing on the environment in Oxford for a number of years prior to that, working abroad on rural development projects in parts of Africa and Asia. So I've been connected to environmental sustainability, management of the environment.
So you said moving into a more rural area, that allowed you to connect more with nature. So what could you say the key differences between living in an urban environment and living in a rural environment in terms of, you know, your lifestyle, in terms of maybe even spiritually, anything like that?
I think spiritually there's that connection. You know, we can build in an urban environment a separation between us and nature, an artificial world really, and it's a world where there's a lack of spirituality because you're not connected to the universe around you. So there's that obvious spiritual link that when you're in the countryside you sort of recognize you're part of something greater. But also there's just a very practical link that when you go into your local Sainsbury's and you open a packet of chicken nuggets or whatever, there's no connection with that animal, there's no connection with the process that made it. Similarly, when you buy your Nike shoes, you don't know about the slave labor that was making it in a factory in Indonesia. So this whole idea of connection is important spiritually, but it's also important in that practical level that you're aware of what you're doing and where what you're consuming comes from. So obviously in a rural environment you see farming around you, you see activity, and we slowly got closer to nature in that way. We got to know local farmers. We actually started with a farmer we knew that reared chicken. We would go along and kill our own chickens on his farm, and it just led us down that route of thinking, well, you know, maybe this is a sort of lifestyle that we could go for.
Okay, and so when you decided to establish your farm, obviously because of your beliefs, you decide to go down the halal route. What is halal all about? What defines halal?
Well, the Quran defines halal, and if you look in the Quran for a definition of halal, it says, they ask you what is halal, say to them what is tayyib is halal. So the Quran self-defines halal as tayyib. Literally, halal means acceptable, permissible. So is it acceptable to eat a factory farmed animal? Of course it's not acceptable. So it's a word, and the word actually has meanings. The meanings are the literal meaning, which is acceptable, and then the meaning given to it by verses of Quran that maybe explain it more. It's what is acceptable as opposed to what is unacceptable. And our natural conscience is going to tell us factory farmed food is unacceptable, something pumped full of chemicals is unacceptable. So it's really quite straightforward. As I say, the Quran does give that definition of tayyib, and tayyib is a word that can connotate pure, wholesome, natural, organic. All of those sort of meanings come into the word tayyib. So I think very clearly when we're talking about food, because of course halal applies also to your income in terms of financial transactions or any sort of behavior, acceptable or unacceptable. But if you're talking about food primarily, it means something that's been reared in a natural, healthy way, that you haven't abused the animal. Looking at the hadith of the Prophet on welfare, we know that, you know, care for the animal is important. Chemicals, the Prophet only farmed organically. Chemicals didn't come in until about 70 years ago. So, you know, the whole forms of natural farming, conserving the environment, not abusing the environment. If you bring all those things into the way you produce food, then clearly that's what halal is going to be. Whereas if you do the opposite and you're tricking nature, you're using chemicals, you're abusing the animals, you're increasing suffering and whatever, that's obviously not halal.
Not acceptable.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it seems like you really need to be in touch with nature to be aware of what's acceptable.
Absolutely, you have to have that connection, and that's really what we try and tell people when they come here, because when they come to the farm, we stress that there is that separation. So firstly, what you eat, where it comes from, knowing that the animals have lived a good life. But not just that, we have compost toilets here for people to use, to say, well, you know, you've got to take responsibility of what comes out after you've eaten and where that goes, because that's polluting groundwater. And then we go a stage further, we have a wood burner here that produces all the heat for the house. The radiators that we run in the house, they all run off a natural wood burner. So we say, where do you get your energy from? You know, if you're using oil, what's the impact of that on the environment? So at every level, people need to be connected.
So we have a lot of products, you know, on the supermarkets that might be labelled as natural or organic. So where do you think the distinction comes between what truly is natural and what might be labelled as natural?
I think connection, again, is the key issue. You've got to be connected. There's a growing trend of farmers' markets in the UK, and it's a really good thing. So I think for those who are looking for natural, healthy, organic, halal foods, it's asking the questions where it's produced, how it's produced. You can play a lot of tricks in the modern industry, and consumerism will realise that if organic or natural has a good label, it'll go on a lot of products. There are people that are producing, and the word tayyib is becoming a buzzword. People are slapping the word tayyib on, yet the food that actually is being produced by it is mechanically slaughtered, factory farmed, etc., etc. So yeah, people can apply these labels, and I think you've got to go beyond just looking for the label. That's the first step, is start looking for the label. But the second step is say, well, where's it produced? Who's the farmer? Can we visit the farm? Can we in some way create a connection? And it's those connections that create a community.
And so for those, you know, looking, to either get in touch with you, get in touch with the farm, maybe visit the farm, learn more about what organic really is, what tayyib really is, where can you direct them to?
So we do try and maintain the farm and keep it going by having things like open days, school visits. Education's important, so anyone that wants to come along, just look at our website for details of volunteering weekends, open days, school visits, group visits, camping. We do a campsite in the summer. So lots of things going on.
Okay, thank you very much. That's
thank
all
you.
we're asking. It was really good to go see Lufti on his own farm where we interviewed him. Got a lot of good footage.
So, from what I understand, the farm is organic, halal organic?
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does it mean? I mean, for me, halal is, I know what halal is, but halal organic?
Okay, so organic is about what they eat, I think, what the animals eat. So he's got sheep, he's got goats, he even had llamas there, yeah? And all they eat doesn't have any pesticide, herbicide, none of that in it. That's what organic is about. So it's about what they eat. And then we've got free range, meaning they're all able to run away, run everywhere. And then halal is, I guess, mainly the focus is on how it's killed. But what his message is that for it to truly be halal in the way that was, prescribed, it's got to have those elements of organic, of free range in it.
It's a more wholesome kind of perspective of what
exactly.
the animals be treated like. Now, for me, halal is often, the only question I have when I hear halal is the way it's slaughtered.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? I don't really hear about how the chicken was raised and how, none of that is mentioned. It's just about, was it slaughtered according to the Islamic way, the jugular vein, Bismillah. That's really what the emphasis is on. And what I like about this interview is that he's emphasizing the life of the actual animal, how it's being kept, how it's being reared, when it's being fed. And that's, for me, more important in some aspects than just the way you kill the animal, because if the animal grows in an environment where, let's say, it's been cramped, it's not been looked after very well, just to finish it off with Bismillah, it's not really, it's not complete.
It's like you're zooming in to about, a 10-second part of the whole life.
Exactly.
It's like you're zooming into something that overall is irrelevant. Overall, you want to look at the whole process, and that's what his message was.
And I think the Islamic sacrifice, the Bismillah part, is like the
cherry on the top.
Exactly, yeah. It completes a process. it's not the processes, it completes an entire process.
Yeah.
And we know in the Sunnah and the Hadith to treat the animals well,
Yeah.
to sharpen the blade, to
Yeah.
feed them properly, not
Yeah.
to tie them up. All of that is missing.
Yeah.
So I really like his emphasis on that halal tayyib,
Yeah, tayyib, yeah.
additional emphasis. Now, I know in the West, when people hear halal, they think of blood, animals being slaughtered in the name of
Non-Muslims,
religion. Yeah,
yeah,
non-Muslims,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot of like negative stereotype
Yeah,
about halal.
yeah.
And even amongst us, the Muslims, there's a misconception of what halal really
Yeah,
is.
for real, yeah.
And I mean, so from that perspective, what's the relevance of halal organic halal to people?
I
What
guess
would it drive?
It's taking what we know to be our high standards, and we're actually trying to get up there, I think. That's what it's about. So I think what we're stuck in a lot of the time when we're talking about the blade and stunning versus non-stunning, what we're talking about is the laws. Like, we're very focused on these laws, which is like a yes or a no, a black or white thing. Whereas Islam is more than that, isn't it? Islam is about what is the right thing to do. If you're thinking above the mark, and you're going to be worried, is it healthy for me? Has the animal lived well? Because even the way the animal lives is going to dictate the quality of that meat.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it comes down to that as well. I found this statistic, okay? 88% of the meat in the halal meat is stunned.
88%.
Yeah, 88%.
88%.
So, yeah. So even though we're like zooming in on that issue, it's still 88%. So,
That's a really high proportion.
Yeah.
Because for me, the halal stamp really is
Yeah.
the slaughter,
yeah,
rather than the stunning. So to know that 88% of the meat is already stunned.
yeah. So it's
Kind of-
what I mean by that is it's stunned and then they slaughter it.
Okay, but another controversy is obviously stunning.
Could
There's
kill
a-
it.
That could kill it, yeah.
Especially with chickens.
And even
stuff.
it's not humane to stun an animal like that. And, you know, it's
Yeah, exactly. So it's again, it's about what level, what standard are we looking at?
According to a recent report by the Global Islamic Economic Forum, by the year 2019, up to 1/4 of the world's meat will be consumed by Muslims. That's up to $2.5 trillion worth of halal meat. Now, if the trend continues, there will seriously be a need for people to take more heed of where their food is being sourced and how the animals are treated.
The consumption's got to go down, even for our own health probably. It's about the consumption largely, because the market controls stuff. You know, Lufti, he mentioned that the prices he sells for is really so low. It's really low compared to what he could ask
sell
for.
yes.
But he's trying to make it easy for people and make a living, right? So he's already trying to help us out, right? We've got to...
We have to support him.
Yeah, at some point we've got to...
Yeah, we have to support him.
Exactly.
Because as I've learned is that farmers, for example, they really invest everything. It's not a profession where you can come in at 9, leave at 5, and that's it. You have to literally live your life
man.
on the farm.
Yeah.
So for someone to put themselves out of the way and try and kind of revive the high moral standards of the halal stunning and the halal sacrifice,
Yeah.
the halal meat industry,
Yeah.
really is putting all his eggs in one basket, so to say. And I think as a community we have to support that by going out and demanding not only halal but halal tayyib or halal organic,
Yeah.
so that people can actually be awakened to the desire for that amongst the people. As you said, the market controls things.
Yeah.
If we begin demanding that, sooner or later there'll be a supply of that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, we're part of the problem and also part of the solution here. But I did like also the idea that not only was he looking after the animals, but he was also looking after the environment.
Yes.
So the compost and the waste system, the way he managed it, it was all looking after the environment as a steward of the environment. So that again is an element we miss when we talk about halal and the consumption of our food. That's not just the meat, but also the crops.
Yeah.
All of that, the pesticides not being used, for example, that should also be emphasized, looked at.
Even his energy comes from, he had solar panels, and I think he burns wood chips as well from his own land. He'll cut down trees and he'll turn that into chips and burn that for his heating. So again, like, he's taking it to a next level, obviously, but we all take little steps. Like, we don't want to burden people with, oh, you have to do this. But what we're saying is there is a higher level to look up to.
Absolutely.
Like, if you're looking up, at least you could start moving a bit towards it.
Absolutely.
Rather than looking straight.
And also it kind of removes this very narrow confine of what halal is.
Yeah.
Just a slaughter.
Yeah.
And most of our debate about halal is it stunned, is it not stunned? That really is the discussion, whereas, as you mentioned, at a higher level, there's also the life of the animal, the environment in which it was actually reared, and all these different components of what it takes to actually bring halal to your table.
Yeah.
And as we do know, and this is important, what we eat affects our actions, our lifestyle, our spirituality, our I guess our proximity to what is good and pure. So what we consume actually has an impact on us, not only physically, also spiritually. So it's important for us to actually really check. And this is something that people who came before us were very meticulous about when they were pious, where the food came from and how it was prepared. And to some extent, who prepared it even. So these are important things we have to revive and try and rise above the mark in how we consume food.
You know, overall in the UK, organic farming is decreasing. Since about, I think it was 2010, in a government study, they showed the numbers are going down, right? Because it's hard, it's tough in the end. But again, that's the point where the Muslims step up. Just how we can share, you know, hijama practices with non-Muslims. This is something where we say, look, I know like there's money and it's hard and this and that, but we're better than that, you know?
And we have to give an alternative to society.
Yeah.
You know, that quality usually is in short supply.
Exactly.
When things are premium, they're not easily found and obtained, but people make an effort to acquire it because of the value added to that. So I think, again, in a market where there's a lot of cheap meat being produced, to give an alternative that is pure and wholesome would definitely be an advantage, not only to us, but to the society as a whole. And we have to revive that tradition, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Should we take a look at what people have said online about this? So, Farhaj says, halal is just kosher for Muslims, same exact process. Treat animal right, sedu organic feed, give it swift death, bleed out blood.
Okay, that's a bit, there are points I agree with, in that the process he mentioned, or she mentioned, I'm not sure whether it's the same as kosher, because kosher is like the Jewish alternative to sacrificing
slaughter,
ritual, yes. Is it the same? Do you think it's the same? Is it exactly the same?
I don't know, but it obviously would not be exactly the same. It's not going to be exactly the same. So I think what the angle they're coming from is the process, like the physical thing, what you do. But obviously, as Muslims, we've been told to do it a certain way, so we do it that way. So there's a spiritual aspect.
But also we're allowed to eat kosher.
Yeah.
We're allowed to eat kosher.
Yeah.
So there is some similarity, I guess. What I'm trying to say is, given the option, should we distinguish, or should we kind of just...
Of course we distinguish.
Yeah.
I think the point they're coming, I just realised, the point they're coming with is, why are people so worried about halal, non-Muslims, when the kosher is similar as well?
That's a good point, actually.
I think that's what the angle they're coming from. And yeah, I mean, it's all to do with media in the end, like what gets heard, what gets talked about. So that could be a whole other topic about the media and the perception. Then Rhys Davies says, halal meat is cruelty, whichever way you look at it. Slitting the throat whilst fully conscious is barbaric.
Okay, so now we get into the real crux of the matter
here.
Yeah, and people oftentimes, when they hear halal, it's always barbaric, blood, cruelty, pain. Yet we still eat meat. In a society where fast food is growing every single day. So what I think, and I genuinely believe this, I don't think people are out to kind of vilify halal and halal meat. They misunderstand.
They don't know how their meat is made, do they? They don't have a connection in the first place. So they're being told, actually, they're being told halal is like this, this, this. But if you ask them, how is your meat, how is it slaughtered, how is it raised, they probably wouldn't be able to answer it, right? So I don't think they're coming from any moral high ground when they talk about this.
So it's maybe our responsibility to then explain to them, to clarify, to exemplify, in fact, if we have more halal organic farmers, for example, to show them actually halal is an alternative to what's really prevalent in the system right now.
What's being
mass farming, pumped out
Yeah.
hormones. Halal actually is the natural alternative. And rather than fearing halal and having this kind of negative vision of it, explore the positiveness of it and the benefits also associated with it.
I mean, look, people like cows, when they're slaughtered, non-Muslim way, they put a bolt through their head. Again, like, we can use words to make that sound barbaric as well.
But it is barbaric anyway.
It's cruel. So the way he's wording it, he's like, oh, it's barbaric, but it's up to how you want to word it in the end. So, I mean, I think slitting the throat, it drains the blood from the brain, so the nerves break down, so you don't feel it.
It also gets rid of all the toxins
Yeah,
naturally. You don't
yeah.
have blood being kept in the body.
This is what I've heard anyway.
Yeah,
I guess he's coming from a place of not understanding
Yes,
the complete process.
Okay, so I mean, we also went out and we began to discuss this topic with people on the streets, and we asked them really what was more important, the way the animal was reared or the way the animal was slaughtered or killed. And it's a topic of real interest to us and also to those we put it forth to. So we'd like now to transition and show you what response we received from the public. We'll be back right after this.
When it comes to the meat that you eat, what's more important, the way the animal is reared or the way it's slaughtered?
Probably the way it's reared.
Okay.
That's a difficult question, actually. Never thought of that. Probably the way it's slaughtered, actually. That's
okay.
yeah, when you think about it, yeah.
And I would, if it were put on the packages of meat, I would advocate it, definitely. I think it's important.
So do you think of free range at all?
Well, to be quite honest, only when I'm buying eggs. Other than that, I wouldn't
Because
say.
it's labelled on the package.
Exactly, because it's also labelled on it, so I know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
otherwise, if I'm at the Tesco or the Sainsbury's, and just see a nice piece of meat, and I'll get that. So.
Okay.
But it's a good consideration, definitely.
If you've got big ambitions, if you want to get places, then you've got to realize that everything comes together. Everything plays in with each other. So diet is one of those things.
You are what you eat.
What I would say is the first step is to get in touch with that nature. Get a feel for what is acceptable, what is not acceptable.
What's on your plate lately? Food is a medicine, but every medicine comes with prescriptions. The right amount, at the right time, in the right way. Nourish your body and remember that everything you put into your mouth ultimately goes into being who you become. You are what you eat, literally.
Maybe you're gonna decrease the meat you eat. Maybe you're gonna start some organic here and there. Maybe you're gonna go full on to the organic meat, the free range meat that is really good for you. Until you reach the point where you're eating healthy, you're putting only good stuff into your body, and you're gonna see the results in your performance.
Eat healthily, live healthily, and consume healthily.
Rise
Rise
above the mark.